We had an excellent meeting just concluded with about 50 participants here in this room and another 20 or so participating by conference call. Really the entire spectrum of the rail companies, the pipeline, the transporters, the marketers, the distributors, and people who are aware of the consumer situation. I'd say the situation is very encouraging and much advanced over what it was a year ago. There are about, we told consumers have really filled about 20 million gallons more of propane fuel than they did a year ago. And that's expected by the time it's tallied for the summer early fill to be about 30 million gallons. So there's more supply has been distributed and is being stored. It also means that more supply is coming into the state. A number of the operations have increased their capacities, both the rail lines as well as others have large storage capabilities. That's going to mean additional supply on hand when the harvest begins, and then the winter weather follows that. The big variables, those are the big variables, of course. The weather as it affects the corn, how wet or dry it is, and also when it will be harvested, and then the winter that follows. So, we're not out of the woods. Nobody is complacent, but I think there's been certainly a lot more focus on this, and I thank those in the industry and those in the associations of and farm organizations and our agency heads, Commerce and Commissioner of Commerce, Mike Rothman, Commissioner of Agriculture, Dave Fredrickson, and others have worked. Commissioner Stein, who was singled out for appreciation because of his expediting some of the permitting for some of these new storage facilities. So I think we're as in good shape as we could be today, and we'll continue to monitor the situation closely. We'll continue to bring this group together. They've been meeting throughout the spring and summer. We'll meet again probably in right after the election, unless there's a need to do so sooner. But everybody knows what they need to do, and so far there's every evidence that people are doing it. I don't know, Commissioner Rothman, Commissioner Fredrickson, you want to add anything to that?
I think that sums up we're working ahead.
Okay, well, not respond to questions on that or anything else.
How much more storage is there now?
Well, the consumers have purchased 20 million gallons more than what they call it early fill, the summer early fill. And Mr. Roger Leiter, the head of the association, believes that that number will be 30 million more by the time it's tallied for.
But there's other storage out there.
Well, there's the three spurs. What?
Conway, Kansas.
Come on up here, please.
Yeah. So, we're getting indications. We're getting reports that the areas that have the storage, the reserving capacity, such as Conway, Kansas, and others, are ahead of last year. They've increased their percentages compared to last year at about 15%, which is a good thing for the region. In addition to those reserving and that storage capacity for the region, there's also increased storage capacity at several entities. So, for example, at CHS, they've increased their storage capacity in-state in Minnesota at 2 or 3 facilities. Perkle Gas has also increased their storage capacity, as well as Randy Dooley's facility down in Benson. And those have also increased their ability to facilitate the rail delivery as well.
Governor, you've expressed some concern about the transport of the supply, and you've had some concerns about rail and also the combination of farm stuff going out to the harvest. What is your biggest concern right now?
Well, the Propane Pipeline provided, well, we'd heard before 40% of our propane to Minnesota, and today we were told most recently it's been more 20 to 25%, but it's still a very, and that's stopped bringing propane into Minnesota. It's reversed the direction of the pipeline to take crude oil from North Dakota eastbound. So that filling that gap has been is my primary concern. And again, I was reassured today that everyone involved, the railroads, are conscious of their responsibility, and they're being questioned on a regular basis by CHS and others who need the supply brought to them. That will be tight, I expect, because of the overload on the rail system throughout the state with delivery of coal and delivery of movement of all the grain and very large harvest that's being forecasted, and then the oil by rail shipments. So you got them trying to speed up or increase their capacity to do 4 different things, and that's going to inevitably make it difficult to meet all those demands and all those obligations. But there's every indication that thus far they have been doing so, and that they recognize the need for them to supply this industry sufficiently.
Can I ask you this way, Governor? If we get a cold snap, if we get a polar vortex for a month like we had last year, are you concerned that you're not going to be able to get these supplies to the people who need them?
Well, we did last year. And part of that was low-income energy assistance. We got the resources to people, and we got the supply. I expect if it's another severe winter, as Mr. Leiter said, if there had been a January thaw last year and the rest of the weather remained the same, we would not have had the problem that we did. So if there's another unusually severe winter, and if there's another late harvest that requires a lot of propane for drying, then we'll have a tight supply situation, and we're better prepared to handle that. We're monitoring it. We'll be unquestionably be aware of what's developing, positive or negative, farther in advance than we were before, and we'll be ready to take the necessary corrective action. So we made it through last year. It was tight squeeze, but it gave everybody a very loud wake-up call of the need to redouble their efforts and to be in communication and the like. And the participation today from people who came in from all over the state or on the phone indicates that there's a high level of awareness about the urgency of the situation.
You pressed the railroads to do more, in particular on egg shipments, with the questions of how much crude oil is moving by rail. How can you raise those concerns and yet still be persuaded by the railroads that they're going to be able to move as much propane as you need, especially since this pipeline isn't moving any propane?
Well, I mean, that's a very good point. We raised that with them. I mean, there's no question that the rail transport system in this state is very seriously overextended with the oil transport, the propane, the moving grain, and then delivering coal to Excel and Minnesota Power, perhaps others, all of which are, I've heard complaints about, all of which seem to be, strained, and to have all 4 of them requiring, additional transport, faster transport and the like is I mean, the rail lines are going to have to balance out very carefully how they prioritize, and again, it's hard to say now, without knowing when the harvest is going to start and some of the other variables, but they're going to have to be balancing that, and we're going to be on top of them very carefully. BNSF and CP was here today, right? And CN was on by phone, was not nearly as persuasive in their response. So we're going to be on them very rigorously to find out what their situation is, to monitor what they're doing, what they're not doing, to talk with others who are recipients of their supplies and services to see if they're getting what they need when they need it.
Are you going to get regular reports from the railroads on the car availability and that type of thing? And if you do, as governor, what can you do about it? How can you influence what the railroads do?
Well, by putting pressure on them and pointing out the deficiencies that exist. Again, you can't do that in the abstract, but once the situation is real, and they'll be aware of it as well. But as was said at the meeting, I think there was general agreement. The best communications are occurring at the local level between the whoever brings the supply that area. I don't know all the technical terms, but the supplier with the marketer, the consumer. I mean, all that, those thousands of interconnections, and as I said, everybody knows everybody else. But that communication network is the best, most effective way of making supply meet demand. Okay. We're going to try to have an overview over the whole situation so we can be aware if there's a danger of developing in some region of the state or some aspect of it. But ultimately, the government doesn't deliver the fuel; the private sector does.
Governor, what did the propane manufacturer suppliers tell you about cost of it this winter? What can Minnesotans expect to pay, and what can the state do to mitigate any shock?
Well, one of the reasons that the early fill is being promoted, is recommended every year, and it's being promoted strongly this summer, is that the price in the summer is usually at the seasonal low, and right now it's about 5 to 8 cents a gallon higher than it was a year ago. They don't keep precise numbers because they would be issues of trade violations for doing that, but they have a general sense that it's 5 to 8 cents a gallon more than it was a year ago, and that those prices will go up into the fall and winter. So encouraging people to early fill and providing them with the means to do so are both very, very important parts of the strategy. The trouble with the federal low-income assistance is that we don't get the money until from mid-October to mid-November, depending on when Congress acts. And we communicated with our delegation before, and we'll do again now, about the need to move that timetable as far forward as possible. But we don't have the authority within the federal government. I should correct that. The federal government won't allow us to get reimbursed if we were to take if we were to advance state money ahead of the federal money, so we're constrained from doing that. So the long answer is that we don't have as much going on as we wish we did in terms of providing the means for people, lower income people especially, to early fill and take advantage of the prices and the supply availability. But we're pushing the federal government as hard as we can. We'll continue to do so, and we'll continue to, once we get that money, 102